I'm Josephine. Standing at my kitchen window, holding a cup of warm tea, I look out at the bustling city below. My phone lies face down on the counter, filled with 79 missed calls. It's a Thursday evening after a long shift at the hospital, and the weight of those calls is almost palpable. This whole situation started a while ago. I grew up in a large family, part of an old money clan that hailed from a historical New England town. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were pillars of the local community. My dad, a reserved and traditional man, was a successful banker, and my mom was involved in various high society charities. However, they had a very specific image of what their daughters should be. My older sister, Isabella, is 5 years older than me. Blonde, elegant, and married to Henry, a wealthy real estate developer, she has always fit the mold of the perfect daughter in our parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I pursued a career in nursing. I worked long 12-hour shifts in the local hospital, coming home tired with a determination in my heart that no one in my family ever really understood. Christmas was always a bittersweet time for me. Each year brought the same routine. Mom would host a grand Christmas dinner with all the traditional dishes, prepared by our family chef. Dad would be in his study, going over some last-minute business papers until it was time to sit at the beautifully decorated dining table. Isabella and Henry would arrive in their luxury car, their presence immediately commanding the attention of the room. They'd bring with them a sense of grandiosity and a flurry of expensive gifts. I, on the other hand, would rush from the hospital after a night shift, driving through the snow-covered roads. When I finally made it to the family home, still in my nurse's uniform, no one would even bother to ask how my shift was. It was as if I was just an afterthought, always living in Isabella's shadow. After dinner, as we all sat in the living room, Dad stood up with a proud smile on his face. "This year," he said, "your mother and I have something special planned." Mom then walked in from the next room, carrying a large, velvet-wrapped box. She placed it gently in front of Isabella. "For you, dear," she said, her eyes filled with love and admiration. Isabella opened the box with excitement, and inside was a first-class, month-long trip around the world for her and Henry. The estimated cost was around $50,000. Everyone in the room erupted in cheers. Dad clapped Henry on the back, and Mom dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, trying to keep a straight face. I had learned long ago that showing my true feelings would only make things worse. Then, Mom looked at me and said in a casual tone, "Oh, Josephine, yours is on the sideboard." I walked over to the sideboard and found a small, plain envelope with my name written on it in Mom's handwriting. Inside was a single $5 scratch-off lottery ticket, the kind you might find at a convenience store. I stood there for a moment, holding the ticket. Then I walked back to my seat and simply said, "Thank you." No one seemed to notice the silence that followed. Isabella was already on her phone, looking up the itinerary of her trip with Henry. Dad had turned on the news, and Mom was arranging the leftover dessert plates. That night, I drove home without scratching the ticket. I placed it on my kitchen counter and didn't touch it for a few days. I didn't want to face another disappointment in the new year. But on a Friday morning, as I was getting ready for work, half asleep and in my scrubs, I decided to finally scratch it. I grabbed a coin from my purse and started scratching the surface. One symbol after another, and then I scratched the bonus box. I was so shocked that I rubbed my eyes, thinking there might be a mistake. But there it was, in clear print, $100 million. I just stood there, in my kitchen, in the early morning light, staring at the ticket that my parents had given me as a thoughtless gift. I didn't scream or cry. Instead, I slowly sat down on the kitchen floor and just stayed there, motionless. The number completely changed my perspective on my life. I knew that once I told anyone, things would never be the same. So, I made the first decision right then and there: I wouldn't tell a soul. I got up, put the ticket inside an old medical book on my shelf, and went to work as if it were a normal day. I took care of my patients, checked their vitals, and answered their questions with a smile. No one in the hospital had any idea that the quiet nurse in room 3 was now one of the richest people in the building. The process of verifying the lottery win took several weeks. I hired an attorney named Laura, a tough and no-nonsense woman who specialized in handling large-scale windfalls. Then, I brought on a financial advisor named Mr. Davis, a calm and experienced man who had dealt with large sums of money before. They guided me through every step of setting up a trust and managing my newfound wealth. After taxes, the money that landed in my account was still an astronomical amount. I could have changed my life overnight, but I decided to keep my routine. I continued going to work at the hospital, living in my small apartment. Routine was my anchor in this sea of new possibilities. For 3 months, I didn't say a word to my family. It wasn't about revenge, I just needed time to think clearly before making any irreversible decisions. During this time, I used my money to do some good. I paid off my student loans in one go. I bought a large, abandoned building in the city and worked with a local charity to convert it into affordable housing for single mothers. I also established a scholarship fund at the nursing school I graduated from, specifically for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Then, in early spring, Mom called me. Isabella had apparently mentioned the around-the-world trip to someone at the country club, and word had spread that the gift was overly generous. Mom called to tell me about this in a nonchalant way, and in the middle of the conversation, she said, "You know, Josephine, if you had made more of a name for yourself, we would have done something special for you too." I listened to her quietly, said I understood, and then hung up the phone. 2 weeks later, Isabella called. Henry had some unexpected medical expenses, and their insurance didn't cover a large portion of it. She mentioned the trip casually, as if we were equals having a normal conversation. I told her I was sorry, but I wasn't in a position to help at that time. She paused for a long time and then said, "You're a nurse, Josephine. You make a decent living." I simply replied, "I know. Take care, Isabella," and hung up. That's when the calls started pouring in. First, it was Dad, then Mom again, followed by Isabella, Henry, and even a few relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. I'm not sure how the news of my lottery win got out. Mr. Davis thinks it could have been a public record related to the trust setup or someone at the lottery office who talked. Now, here I am, looking at my silent phone. I haven't returned any of those calls, and I'm not sure if I ever will. I've learned that I can take my time with decisions that affect my life. I go to work because I love helping others, not because I have to. I've made a difference in the lives of many through my charitable work. For the first time in my life, I feel truly free, no longer seeking the approval of those who never saw my worth. The money was just a means, but the real change was in finally deciding my own value.